Hey, everyone. Good morning. I said we will get started in a few minutes, but thanks for being here. Feel free to drop your name and where you're joining from in the chat. Hey, Kirsten from Kansas City. Hi, Van. People get my name wrong all the time, so. Hey, Kenya. Hey, Esther. Hi, Michelle. We'll give it one more minute to allow people to continue to trickle in, but excited that y'all are here. Hi, Rosie from London. Hey, Milton. Hey, Samara. We'll give it one more minute. Hi, Tamika. All right, let's go ahead and get started just so we can use all of our time. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our February webinar, From Intent to Execution, Creating and Tracking Smart ERG Goals for this year. I am Dumebi Igbuna. I'm one of the co-founders of Chezie, and I'll get into a deeper intro a bit later into the presentation, but did want to just get started with our agenda for today. So as I said, we will go through an introduction. I'll tell you a bit more about myself as well as Chezie. We'll level set with kind of an introduction to the ERG maturity model. We'll talk about the difference between affinity groups and BRGs and give you some real world examples. We'll then go into the meat of our workshop, talking about smart ERG goals, how you can start to think about your ERG as a company that you're running, and then a 5-step framework for goal setting. We'll then talk about how you can leverage Chezie. So I'll actually do a live demonstration of the tool to talk about how you can start to track and create smart goals within this technology. And then we will end with a conclusion with a little bit of a Q&A. All right, so a little bit more about me. Again, Dumebi Igbuna. I'm one of the co-founders of Chezie. A little bit about Chezie. I founded Chezie with my brother, Toby Igbuna. We are Nigerian immigrants, so Chezie is actually the Igbo word for reflect. And our goal is really to create workplaces that we ourselves would want to work for. We were both ERG leaders in our past life. So I was the Black ERG lead at IBM. My brother was a Black ERG leader at Accenture. So we are really passionate about these communities and the spaces that they create, but also familiar with the kind of the hassle of managing ERGs on top of your day job. So that is what we wanted to solve for. Some other fun facts about me. I am a foodie. I live in Chicago, so the food scene here is amazing, which is something I didn't expect when I first moved here. I love fashion. I've been into fashion since I was like 8. I used to want to be a fashion designer, actually. And I'm an R&B super fan. That's really all I listen to, whether I'm working out or laying at home. I'm all about R&B. So yeah, a little bit about me. Chezie, I've already told you what we do. So again, we're a comprehensive software for companies looking to manage all things ERG operations. So from scheduling events to reporting to budget. And I'll take you through, again, a live demonstration later in this presentation. But this is just a shout out to some of the companies that we work with. We are primarily in the tech space. So you see folks like Airbnb, Block, DocuSign, a lot of them are represented within the audience today. But we've started to expand into other industries as well. So financial services, healthcare, manufacturing. So if you're looking for ERG software, would love to talk to you. So as I mentioned, before we get into this, I do want to just level set talking about the maturity model and how we move from affinity groups and ERGs to BRGs. But I do want to make one thing very clear. There's a lot of stuff in the news right now about DEI and what's going to happen to it, et cetera, et cetera. And I think people are reacting in a way that makes them think that their employee resource groups need to be business resource groups or fully about business. And we tend to disagree over at Chezie. I think first and foremost, ERGs are meant to be a place of community. They have and always should be for us and by us. So with ERGs becoming BRGs, I think about it in like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your programming should be dedicated and focused on your members and making it a better experience for them at your workplace. 20% of it can be about what we're going to talk about in terms of how do we align it to the business and establish it as a BRG. But just want to level set there. Again, I think the community aspect of ERG should be first and foremost in our minds, and then we can talk about how we connect it to the greater organizational purpose. All right, so let's talk about the ERG maturity model. First, starting with affinity groups. A lot of folks have affinity groups, and these are just kind of grassroots organizations. Most of the time, they are informal. They're happening in Slack, they're happening in Teams, and they're really focused on just building community. They don't necessarily have budget because they're not formally supported by the organization. They don't necessarily have goals that tie back to either the affinity group's goals itself or the company's goals. And most of the time, there's no formal executive support. From there, we move into ERGs. So ERGs have the same responsibilities as an affinity group. So again, they are focused on building community, but then they also have some other things, some other aspects that we want to consider. First, they do have an allocated budget. So typically when we get to ERG status, these groups are formally supported by the business. They are connected to the company's formal DEI strategy some way, somehow. So you'll typically see them shouted out in the impact reports, the DEI reports, and they are meant to go back to a company's DEI objectives. There are goals and KPIs related to the ERG itself. And when I say related to the ERG itself, this might be increasing membership by X% as opposed to connecting it directly to the business. And they are focused on community and professional development. From affinity group to ERG, we then land into BRG. BRGs have all the responsibilities of an affinity group or an ERG. So again, really focus on building community, professional development, but they're also responsible for a higher budget. These are the groups that are really partnering. I think that's that keyword, partnering with the organization. So in that, they have a really formalized structure and leadership team. So think co-leads, chapters, executive sponsors, leaders have a really high visibility within the organization. And they have goals and KPIs that are related to the ERG itself, but also back to HR and business priorities. So these goals, instead of being just focused on the ERG around membership or number of events we want to host, this might be, I want to start a referral engine from our ERG to our recruitment team. This might be, I want our ERGs to act as a focus group for our marketing team. And I'll give you some real world examples of what that looks like in practice. So sample programming for each of these groups. So for affinity groups, again, we're really focused on community building. So this is going to be happy hours, movie screenings, just this kind of like informal connection points. For ERGs, we're still doing a lot of that community building, but we're moving into more professional development workshops, maybe leadership panels. We might also do some more external community focused stuff. So partnering with external organizations to help support our ERGs demographics. And then we get to BRGs. So again, still doing the same things as affinity groups and ERGs, but they are partnering with the business, meaning that they might have a referral program for their talent acquisition team. They might act as a focus group for their product development team or marketing team. They might go to colleges and help recruit underrepresented talent, et cetera, et cetera. And I will say we do have a Q&A at the end. I see a couple questions popping up in the chat, so I'll make sure to get through those at the end of the presentation. I just want to make sure we can get through all the content. Okay. So let's do some real world examples of BRGs. First, we have Culture Amp. So Culture Amp actually worked with its Pride ERG because they noticed that there were specific members, there were specific benefits that were going to members in the US, but they weren't available to members in EMEA. So they surveyed their EMEA members and got that feedback, and the leads took those requests to the benefits team and got them available for their European members. Another example of this is Charles Schwab. They partnered with its Black ERG to help the sales team find minority-owned businesses for them to support and work with. And then finally, we have Pixar, which worked with its Black ERG to remove the marketing, or to review, excuse me, the marketing content for the movie Soul. If you remember, I think that came out in 2020 or 2021. But they worked with the Black ERG to review the marketing content for that movie because that movie was so representative of the Black community. They wanted to make sure that the marketing assets, the copy, all of that stuff was also representative of the population that it was serving. A couple notes about this. One, this takes time. This isn't something that your ERG will just kind of pick up and do tomorrow. It's a conversation, it's a partnership, again, with the organization. And then two, remember that your primary goal is to support your community. But transitioning to a BRG does also mean that you can begin to think about the business challenges as a priority for your group. So remember to always support your demographic, your community, and then we can start to think about business challenges that your group may be able to support some way, somehow. Okay. I want to open it up in the chat because I'm curious, in what ways has your ERG acted as a BRG? And just drop some ways in the chat. I'm curious what y'all are doing out there. This will probably be helpful for other folks here too. I know someone's doing some stuff around BRGs and connecting. Yep. Nicole, we share ideas for professional growth and personnel management. I love that. External conferences, experiences in recruiting. A lot of folks will attend, Afro Tech, Latinas in Tech. All those conferences are really great places to find underrepresented talent to funnel into your talent pipeline. Nicole, we host L&Ls, Lunch and Learns with specialists in our community. Awesome. Rosie, they identify guest speakers who deliver workshops to our clients as well as internal community. Esther, our company works with college and university on career fairs to hire underrepresented talent. I think that's a big one. Again, bringing in people from your demographic or community into the organization. We helped create an internal resource to guide discretionary spending towards BIPOC and women-owned businesses. Awesome. That really is for, brand awareness, putting your brand back into the community. Kenya, that's awesome. Worked with the benefits team to implement parental leave. We're working on moving from social engagement to personal growth and development and talent recruitment. Kim, language advisory board to help translate documents for physician referrals and community needs. That's awesome. That's directly contributing to the business to making sure a wider demographic can use your services. Host focus groups to assist with product building, benefits for transgender healthcare and complex healthcare coverages. Y'all are doing a lot of great stuff. I actually really, really love to see this. Last one I'll read out is Nicole. We work with our company L&D and leadership to make sure that the deliverables are accessible to all. And we use my group to source ideas on where the company can improve, change, and accessibility and comfort to increase professional growth and motivation. I think something that I'm seeing a lot here is that you're looking to your members or your ERG participants as almost like focus groups, like they're giving you direct feedback, whether it be on benefits or marketing or your product, which is something that we're seeing a lot of folks kind of gravitate to. All right. So again, y'all seem to be doing a lot of great things as we look to transition from ERG to BRG. And for those of you who are kind of like, oh, I think our ERGs might be stuck in that affinity group or ERG model, do not fret. So we're going to kind of walk through how you can start to transition into doing more BRG activities and then incorporate goal setting within this. So again, if you're thinking like, wow, I want my group to act more as a BRG, but I don't know where to start. I think this section is really for you. It really starts with thinking like a CEO. So again, I started Chezie with my brother, Toby Egbuna. He is actually our CEO. I am CMO. But one way to approach goal setting is to think like a CEO. CEOs really focus on vision, strategy, sales, fundraising, and building leadership teams. So as a CEO, Toby has plenty of roles. This includes fundraising. So he's trying to manage our finances and seek funding. This includes planning on how we'll grow. So he really sets the vision for the company. He talks to our customers and see what else should we build within our product. how should we grow our team? This also includes updating stakeholders on our progress. So we have investors. It is up to him to kind of put out an investor update and tell them exactly how we've grown within the last quarter and some things that we might be behind on or need help with. So that's his job as a CEO. And in a lot of ways, the responsibilities as an ERG leader to correlate or relate back directly to the responsibilities of a CEO. I think your best bet, especially if you're thinking of being an ERG leader as a career progression move, is to really think about being an ERG leader as a CEO. Again, as an ERG leader, you have the responsibility of keeping the vision for your ERG. So you're the one who's setting the goals and setting the vision. You have to manage the budget that's given to you from either HR or your DEI team. You have to regularly update your stakeholders, whether that's your HR team or your executive sponsor, on the progress of your groups. You have to plan for growth. No one wants their membership numbers to stay stagnant. So you have to figure out ways to get more employees involved. All the things that a CEO is doing, you're doing within your ERG. So it's just a matter of like shifting your mindset to say, hey, I am the CEO of my community within this ERG. So with that in mind, thinking like a CEO also comes with creating SMART goals. So this is really where we'll get into the workshop portion of today's webinar, talking about how you can create and track SMART goals for 2025. So for those who aren't familiar with this framework, SMART goals are really a structured approach to goal setting that ensures your objectives are clear, actionable, and measurable. The acronym SMART stands for specific. Specific meaning that your goals are well-defined and clear. So instead of saying increase ERG engagement, specify, I want to increase ERG attendance by 20% in Q2. So you're giving it some type of start and end period, right? Measurable, the goal should include criteria to track progress and determine success. So an example might be, I want to host professional development workshops. I want to host 4 professional development workshops in 2025, each with at least 5 attendees. So again, it's something that we can measure. Did we hit 4? Did we get 50 attendees? Achievable, the goal should be realistic given your available resources and constraints. Again, as ERG leaders, we have really big ideas, but you also have to realize that this isn't necessarily your full-time job. So making sure that your goal is realistic. So this might mean I want to launch a mentorship program with at least 10 mentor-mentee pairs within 6 months. 10 is pretty realistic. It doesn't involve every single person within your ERG getting paired up. It doesn't involve everyone in the company. 10 is a good number considering everything else that you have on your plate. The goal should be relevant, meaning that this aligns back with broader business or DEI priorities. So if you know your company has a goal of increasing their retention rates, your ERG goal might be, I want to increase retention rates of ERG members by 15% by integrating ERG participation into leadership development programs. And then lastly, they should be time bound, really going back to specific. The goal should have a clear deadline to create urgency and accountability, just to make sure everyone is on track. So example here would be, I want to secure an annual ERG budget approval process by the end of Q3. By using the SMART goal framework, it really ensures that one, ERGs are aligned with business and DEI goals and objectives, that we as ERG leaders and ERG teams are allowed to focus on high priority measurable outcomes. And then lastly, that our goals are measurable, achievable, and then it simplifies those goals into more manageable steps. So from here, let's actually get into a framework and a way of thinking about how to set and then accomplish these SMART goals. So we have a bit of a 5-step framework. First is going to be to source. So this means sourcing the business or HR challenges that we want to accomplish or rectify within our ERG. Next is to identify a solution. So we have our problem. How are we actually going to solve that problem? From there, once we identify a solution, we actually need to build a plan. So kind of working backwards. If we have I'll actually go through an example, so I'll hold off on that, but build a plan, making sure you have all the stakeholders and necessary resources that you need to accomplish that solution. Next is to execute. So you have the plan. How do we execute on that plan? And then 5 is to measure. Measuring results is really key to us at Chezie. We want you to have your goals, sure. We want you to do your plan, but we also want you to be able to report back on the value of that plan and exactly how you contributed back to the business. So as we go through this, we will have an example. The example I'm going to use is we want to increase BIPOC representation in VP plus leadership, and that's going to be our sample goal. So again, how do we source, our businesses or HR challenges that we want to rectify within our ERG? So this is where you can look for potential challenges. First, it starts with your members. I would essentially go to, my members in Slack or wherever you can find them and kind of ask them like, hey, at our organization, what are the problems that you're seeing? So a lot of folks when I ask like, how is your ERG acting as a BRG? You mentioned benefits. And I think that's a conversation that comes directly from talking to folks within your ERG. And maybe I think Van had the trans healthcare example. It's asking them like, how is healthcare for you? Are these benefits meeting your needs? And then a lot of those issues will come up kind of organically, and that's something that you can tackle within your ERG. From there, you can go to your HR team. A lot of times your HR team is planning for the year, especially since we're in the beginning of the year, and you can just ask them directly, what are the things that our company is prioritizing for 2025? This might be, we want to fill our pipeline with more diverse talent. This might be, we have a really low retention rate. We want to figure out a way to keep people at the company. But by knowing what they're focused on, it can also help to inform what you focus on within your group. And then lastly, you can kind of source information from your company all hands calls or quarterly earnings. Typically on those all hands calls, they'll kind of report out on what went well, but then also what didn't go so well. And if you can see that there's a trend maybe with like, hey, we did really well on this part of our product, but this part of our product is there seems to be some gaps with accessibility. Maybe that's a chance for your ERG to act as a focus group and kind of inform product accessibility, et cetera. I really do recommend kind of starting with your members, though. Again, our ERGs are meant to be community focused, meant to serve the demographic that we represent. So if they are having really specific challenges at the organization, it's a great place to kind of start and help to fill those gaps for your members. From there, so we have our problem. So again, let's say our problem is we want to increase representation of BIPOC employees at the VP plus level. We need to identify a solution. So brainstorming your solution, some questions that you want to ask yourself is one, what expertise do we bring? One of the unique things about being on an ERG is that folks either on your board or in your member caucus, they come from all parts of the business, all levels of the business. So you have expertise in different levels of the business. So it's a really great opportunity for everyone to kind of put their heads together and work on this shared goal. Two, what expertise do our members have? Going back to that first point, everyone is coming from different parts of the business, have different lived experiences. So it's really nice to kind of be able to collaborate on that shared vision. And then three, what perspective do we have on this issue that others don't? So if we're if our goal is like increasing representation at the VP level, again, if we're able to talk to our members, and these are folks that might be entry level, this might be you might have people that just got promoted from IC to manager level. They have a really unique perspective that those folks at the top, your execs might not have. So it's really interesting to go talk to your members and say like, hey, we're seeing this kind of gap in, BIPOC folks at our exec level, knowing that you are, entry level or you just kind of worked your way up. What are some things that you're seeing within the space that maybe we can help to address? Some things to keep in mind when you're brainstorming your solution. One, don't overburden yourself. Aim for one challenge at a time. Again, you all are typically in volunteer positions. This isn't your full-time job. So make sure that it's something that you can chew. Two, your priority should be your members' experience first. So again, even if you've identified like representation at the VP level as your goal, you want to see like what challenges your ERG members are having as it relates to that goal and see if we can help fill those gaps first. Three, loop your members in as much as possible. Events aren't the only type of ERG programming. This might mean you have like mentorship programs. This might mean that you partner with external organizations. There are a lot of things that you can do in order to keep your members kind of in the loop on this initiative. I'd also recommend using ChatGPT or some of these other AI tools to suggest challenge statements and solutions for your challenge. And then also use your allies and other stakeholders to help further your goals. So make sure that your executive sponsor is involved, your HR DEI team is involved because they can also provide additional resources. So from here, so once we've brainstormed our solution, we know the problem that we want to address, we know what our solution is going to be. This is where we build our plan. So that's essentially going from like A to Z. We have our problem, we have our solution. How do we work backwards to create a plan to accomplish that solution? Some things to consider here is who needs to be involved. Again, stakeholder management is so important. With folks coming from different parts of the business, different levels of the business, it's really important to identify who exactly needs to be involved and what is their role or task within this plan. Whose support do we need from this? Are there additional resources we may need? Yes, we have our ERG budget, but maybe we need, dedicated, point of contact from the recruitment team or the referral team, whatever it may be. How will we track our progress? Are we going to use an Asana board? Are we going to use a tool like Chezie to help track our goals? What is the deadline? Again, we want things to be time bound to help keep us all on track and keep us accountable. And then what are the milestones for this plan? So I actually have a sample goal that I can share, or a sample plan that I can share just so you can all see how this may work. So again, our goal is going to be increase Black representation by 10% by the end of the year. So our details, this is where you'll put in your ERG, but then you also have different collaborators. In this case, I'm adding our DEI team as a collaborator, as well as our HR team, namely our recruitment team as a collaborator. And then again, we want this to be time bound, so we're going to put in the due date as well. From there, we have our milestones. So our big 3 milestones, the things that we want to accomplish by the end of the year. One is to attend 3 Black-centered conferences. This might be Afrotech, this might be Render, ATL. There's so many kind of different ones out there, but this would be attend 3 Black-centered conferences with the goal of recruiting, Black talent. Next would be set up a referral channel between ERG and the recruiting team. Again, recruiting team is going to be our stakeholder on this project, but this is how do we get more Black people into that talent pipeline? And then we want to connect manager members of our ERG. So those members of our ERG that are in manager positions, we want to connect them to senior leadership for mentorship so that they can make their way to the VP level. KPIs. So this is actually measurable things that we can track to make sure that we are on track. KPI 1 is going to be Black representation org-wide. So our starting point in this example is 5% Black representation. We want to get that to 10% representation by the end of the year. Starting point 2, KPI 2 is Black talent in the recruitment pipeline. Right now, 14% of our applicants are Black. We want to get that to 30%. And then KPI 3 is members engaged in mentorship. Right now we're at 10% and target is 50%. So for every goal that you create, I would recommend breaking it down to this so that you have exactly the milestones that you're trying to accomplish and when, but then also the way that we are going to track those milestones. And I will actually drop a link in the chat to that template. Feel free to customize it, but it's just a really great place to start in terms of creating those plans. Let me make sure and just drop that in the chat. Okay. Give me a thumbs up if this is helpful. I feel like I am kind of just talking at you, so I want to make sure that this is resonating before we go on. I don't even know if you can do a thumbs up. Okay, I see a couple of thumbs up in the chat. Perfect. Okay. So once we have our plan, next order of business is to execute. So execute on the plan that we just created. So bring it to life. These 3 things will help you. These are 3 things to keep in mind as you execute your plan. One is to communicate your goal and your plan with your leaders. So not only do you need to communicate with obviously like your board members on your ERG, your executive sponsor, you should also communicate with your DEI team because again, they have resources that they can bring in to help support your plan. I would also communicate with, if I'm an ERG leader, I would also communicate with my direct manager because again, ERG leadership is such a great career development opportunity. Some of the opportunities that we have within like our ERG leadership role, we're not getting exposed to in our day-to-day job. So this is a way that you can supplement some of the skills that you're developing in your ERG leadership with your day job. 2, assign responsibilities across ERG leaders. Again, reminder, don't overburden yourself. You have an ERG lead or an ERG board for a reason. Make sure that you're delegating tasks accordingly. And then 3, execute the plan and track progress towards milestones in a monthly meeting. Something that we do at Chezie from like a founding team perspective is we have a weekly standing call. We kind of go over our progress over the last week. We talk about any help needed, and it's a really great place to kind of level set and know exactly what needs to get done this upcoming week. And then lastly is to measure. You're going to want to measure results so that over time you can identify if there are any gaps or any additional help needed, but then also what is working and what's not working. So measuring. So again, none of this really matters if you can't tell the story. So measuring and reporting on your impact is going to be really key. Some things to, or some stats or KPIs to maybe consider in all of this might be like your member opt-in percentage. So like what is your year-to-year membership growth rates? You might want to consider like your conference NPS. So of the people that you spoke to at the conference, how many of them are likely to apply to be at your organization? And then you can also keep in mind for that specific goal that we called out earlier, the representation rates in leadership and how they've kind of increased year over year. Again, this might be available in your like DEI or CSR reports. This might be a conversation that you have with HR just so you can be aware of the numbers. But this is some of the KPIs that we would track for that specific goal of increasing, BIPOC representation in leadership. Okay. So now that we've kind of level set with, what are SMART goals, how do we create and track SMART goals, I also want to talk about how Chezie can support you in this mission. I know a lot of folks are kind of getting to the point of, we want to transition from ERG to BRG, but it is a heavy lift. We might want some technology to help assist us. That is really where Chezie comes in. So in this live demo, I'll kind of talk through how Chezie can support your ERGs, but also support your SMART goals. So first, we'll go through how do you create SMART goals within Chezie. We did just release a goal setting feature, which allows companies to really make sure that all of their ERG initiatives are tied back to a corporate objective. 2, I'll show you how you can actually build and execute on your solution. So we'll go through the process of creating an event or initiative within the platform. And then 3, how do we track and measure success? Analytics and data is really like our pride and joy. So I'll show you the dashboards that we have available to help you track your impact. So I'm going to switch over to Chezie. And this is actually the back end of Chezie. For reference, Chezie is kind of two-sided solution. The front end is going to be where your members actually explore the different ERGs and self-service, the ones they want to participate in. The back end, what you're seeing now, is like our administrative, like operating system. So this is where you'll do everything that you need to do within your ERG. So first, we're going to start with how do we create goals? So you'll actually go to the goals tab here, and you can see that there are different goals kind of outlined, but I will create a new goal, again, with that same goal that we use as an example. So increase BIPOC representation in leadership by 10%. Here we can pick an owner. So in this example, we're going to have the Black ERG be our owner, but since it is BIPOC, we'll also include Latinx. We can also include the women's group. Maybe there's, an intersectional component to this as well. In Chezie, you can tie ERG leaders to this goal just to help your individual ERG leaders keep track of what they've been contributing to. Again, we do want to time box it. So if we're starting it today, let's have it end on the 31st of December. You'll tie it to a cycle and then you'll put in your description. So again, we want to increase representation at the leadership by 10%. You can put some other details here as well. But essentially you will close this out and now you have this as goal. From here, we do allow you to report on outcomes. So again, you have those milestones in mind in terms of, I want to attend 3 conferences. I want to create a referral engine. I want to build out this mentorship program. Chezie allows you to actually come in here and add outcomes as they happen. So let's say we attended 3 conferences. Again, you can select what ERG leaders were kind of responsible for making this happen. And you can say we attended Afrotech, render, and add color. And then from here, you would hit save. Sorry, my monitor is behind my screen. But here you can kind of see all the outcomes that contribute back to this goal. And then as we go through the example of actually creating the event, you can actually log all events, comms, expenses back to this goal. So at the end of it, you have this log or running list of all the activities that are contributing back to this goal of increasing representation. I'll show you a better example here where we have increased employee engagement, but you have all the outcomes that have been logged. And then as you create an event or as you create a comm, everything gets assigned back to this goal so that you have this kind of running log of everything that you're doing that contributes back to the business. So that was, we want to create our SMART goal within Chezie. From here, we want to execute on our plan, right? So let's say our plan is to have a mentorship night. Here, I'm going to go through the process of actually creating an event within Chezie. So you'll put in the title. So let's say it's a mentorship night. Again, you can select your ERG, but we make it really easy for you to co-host with other ERGs. So bring everyone along for this mission. You'll put in your start and end date. They can tie it to a budget. They can select who they want to invite. So we allow this to be really customizable. If you want to invite all members, you can. If you want to invite the whole company, you can. Or if you want to invite a custom segment of your members, you can. Custom segment might be like, I want to invite a specific location, or I want to invite a specific department. You can kind of filter on those attributes. I'll actually do all members. Tie it to a pillar. Again, you'll tie it to a lead, and then you'll tie it to a goal, right? So this goal is going to be increased BIPOC representation. From here, you can put in the information. So whether it is, conference room B, or if it's a virtual event, we do integrate with all those systems, and then you'll put in a description. From there, you will save as draft. And imagine I was an ERG leader when I just did this. From here, as an ERG leader, I can add different communications. So this might mean I want to send a reminder email or a thank you email. I can also put in any budget that is going to be tied to that event. But essentially what you end up with is kind of a summary of this event, includes all the communications, includes all the expenses. And then you have the ability to request approval from your DEI manager or your ERG program manager. This person then gets notified. They can come see this summary of the event. And then from there, they have the ability to either edit the event, request changes from those ERG leaders, or approve the event. Once they approve the event, calendar invites are automatically sent out to the designated invitees. So that is the execution of an event within Chezie. And then lastly is all about tracking, the progress of your event. So I'm going to go to a past event. Let's say Hot Yoga Friday. I know this doesn't relate back to our goal, but just as an example with the analytics. For all past events, you kind of have the summary page. Again, you can see any, expenses that are tied to this event, but then you have these analytics that are coming from all the systems that we're integrated with, right? So you can see your event conversion rates. You can see how many attendees you had pulled in from Zoom or from a QR code. We do integrate with like your HRIS system, so you can actually see by department level office, where did your attendees come from? And then as well as like this running member list of like, how did they RSVP pulled from your calendar versus if they attended pulled from Zoom or whatever your platform is. In addition to these event analytics, because we know not everything is going to be tied to an event, we also just have broader reporting. So this allows you to see, how is my ERG or my ERG program progressing? We have impact reporting, so you can see the 10-year of an ERG member versus non-ERG member, and kind of how ERG participation is affecting the employee life cycle. We have member stats here. So how many unique members do we have? What percentage of our employees participate in ERGs? And then again, a breakdown of where they're coming from within the business. We have overall event reporting and then budget reporting as well. So again, it's really important to track and measure the success of all of your programming and all of your ERGs. And we just want to make it really easy to do that. So as you iterate for the next year, you have some data to kind of fall back on. I'm not going to do a full demo, but I just wanted to go through like how Chezie can support you in this mission of creating and tracking, your SMART goals. But if you're in a place where you're like, I'm not really ready for software, there are other ways that we can help. We did recently just launch a services arm. So we do ERG workshops, very similar to this one, where we can come in and kind of speak to your ERG leadership teams and walk them through the process of creating SMART goals or how they can increase engagement and membership. We've done custom impact reports. So if you want to look back on the year before and kind of see what did our ERG do and put it in a nice bundle to send to leadership, we can do that. And then we do custom engagements as well. So I'll drop that in the chat as too. But yeah, so, I just wanted to kind of go through, especially as a lot of folks are entering into the planning season for 2025, I wanted to talk through, one, the importance of creating SMART goals. How do we do that? How do we think like a CEO in this role and act as our ERG as a business or a company? And then how do we actually go through the framework and the process of creating and building a plan to accomplish those goals? So I hope that was helpful. I know there are a couple of questions in the chat, so I'd love to just kind of open it up for a Q&A. Okay, I am going to open first question. We divide our ERG leadership into 4 roles: chairs, comms leads, event leads, and membership leads. How many goals do you recommend we have, including personal and shared goals? That's a great question. I don't think there's a limit to goals, to be honest. Again, I think just something to keep in mind is like what is going to be manageable and realistic for all the people involved. I would say that it probably makes sense to have like a top line ERG goal if you're not going to relate it back to like a company goal. And this might be, you have 4 kind of distinct, you have 4 distinct kind of roles. This might be, I want to grow our ERG membership by 10%. Your chair is responsible for the programming that's going to go back to growing membership. Your comms lead is responsible for like, how do we boost the visibility of our ERG to the general employees at our company. Your events lead is responsible for putting on events that would go back to that goal. Same thing with your membership lead of our current members. How does your membership lead maybe talk to your members and see what's kind of missing and what they want to see? So I think it would be great if you can have, a top line ERG goal, and then from there you break it out into what those roles are responsible for within that goal. Okay. This is great information. I'm curious to know your thoughts on the recent EOs, executive orders on the information being presented, i.e. increasing BIPOC representation. Yes. I do think we have to be careful, especially for those that are in the public or like federal sector. But I still think a lot of companies are doubling down on this. They might not have explicit, like I want to increase BIPOC representation, but they're still focused on building community and building culture within their organization. So I think you just have to be mindful to where your company is at right now. And again, I think that's a really great opportunity for you to partner with HR or maybe some of your execs to see what their priorities are in this space in the context of those executive orders. And see where we can still kind of fill in the gaps. A question about if this webinar is recorded. Yes, it is. I will send out the recording after this call. And then something about resources. Oh, I apologize. I was putting it in the... You should see the resources now. So I just dropped the services link in the chat as well as the goal planning template in the chat. And then a question from someone else. I am in the state government space. Our ERGs are housed in our training department. How do we go about requesting specific budget? For the person who asked this question, I'm curious, is there someone who oversees DEI at the company? DEI or the ERG program generally at the company, because I think that would be probably the best person to start with to see what resources are available. But I will wait for an answer on that one. Okay. Any other questions? I went through all the ones in the Q&A. Well, if no other questions, I will go ahead and close this out. For the person that is asked about the government sector and how to go about budget, I will actually email you directly. I have your name, and we can chat about that. But I appreciate everyone joining. Again, I will send out the recording as well as those resources that I put in the chat. And if you want to talk more about Chezie and how we can support your ERGs, I'm always happy to do that, maybe take you through a more in-depth demo. But yeah, we will talk soon. I appreciate everyone for joining and have a great rest of your week. All right. Bye, y'all.